So just to take you quickly back on the ride, just to say that it's been quick. So starting with in vitro fertilization in the late 70s and the Human Genome Project in the 80s, here we are sort of 20 years later, from the beginning of the Human Genome Project to full human genomes and now personal genomes, and the human embryonic stem cell, or the stem cell debate, has moved from very early debate in the late 90s when human embryonic stem cells were first developed, and to a situation now where we're starting to learn how to take pretty ordinary cells, skin cells or fat cells, and turn them into every sort of cell of the body. And that really does open up a whole new idea, a whole new series of possibilities for human genetics and medicine. So, and that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Rob. And now we'll have a question and answer session. And maybe I could just ask you if you would go to the microphone at the back. I know the room doesn't seem that big, but voices sometimes don't travel. And maybe just identify yourself, please, as well.
Hi, Rob. I'll lead off. I'm Jim Lowry from St. Michael's Hospital. So, Rob, thanks for laying out that landscape of those issues, and you're sort of uniquely placed to participate in the conversation that you talked about at the start. But I'd like to actually drag you back a little bit to the conversation. And one thing in particular that you mentioned off as one of the kind of structural features of the conversation is this notion that you highlighted of conversion. And it seems to me that that's a critical piece in the sort of apparatus of this conversation. And I get the sense maybe that it's something that you take for granted, how unique your position is to some extent. And could you unpack for us a little bit about what you think is going on in terms of that idea of conversion, both for scientists and for people of faith? Because it strikes me that they really operate quite differently for those two groups, and I wonder if you could just elucidate your thinking about that a little bit for us. Thanks.
Well, thank you, Jim. Conversion's a difficult process. We have this Lenten journey right now where we're called to conversion once again. So I think when you say conversion is required and it's an important part of the conversation, we don't presume it to be easy, but we do presume it to be necessary. If I can start with the scientists, I mean, the very best result a scientist can get after doing an experiment is a result that you can understand but you didn't expect. When you do a really good experiment, you have things all lined up and you say, if I do these things, maybe I'll get this one, or maybe I'll get this one, or maybe I'll get this one. If you do a good job of the experiment, when you look at the data, you want to have your eyes open for the thing you didn't expect. So rather than say, oh, the darn thing didn't work, and you pitch it out, and it's all wasted, you want to say, the data look different, looks like a good experiment, what could this mean? And to spend time with that data, to be converted to a new way of thinking, is really just about the best thing that can happen in science. So scientists are familiar and even desire this idea of conversion. Having said that, we hold on to our views pretty strong. And there's a weird dialogue that's almost necessary there. You have to know what you believe to have a decent conversation, and you have to be open to conversion. And if it's conversion that comes from a conversation, you have to be willing to listen. You have to be willing to listen and hope that you can understand what your dialogue partner is saying. For the believer, again, you need to bring your understanding to the table. But I guess one of the stances that the believer can have that is very positive for this kind of dialogue is that the assumption, and I think this comes very much out of the ecumenical dialogue, that the Holy Spirit is working in your dialogue partner. And so that they are capable of being part of your conversion process. Martin Buber, a great Jewish philosopher from the 20th century, has this concept of I and thou. He says that we need to get into these conversations that are I and thou rather than I and it. It's not me and this other object that's making noise and bothering me, but it's me and the other with whom I wish to be in relationship. So I think sort of the model of union fighting management is not a model that I think is going to work here. And union and management now know that too. I think it is knowing where you come from and offering that, and then being radically open to being transformed by the conversation.